A lifetime of hard work, children laughing in the kitchen, family photos on a restaurant wall, a legacy that lives on. It all comes from the power of a conversation, like the one Tommy Hall had with First Horizon Bank about taking over his father's Charleston-based restaurant business. Now the table is set for a whole new generation. First Horizon Bank. Let's find a way. Go to firsthorizon.com/Tommy. First Horizon Bank, member FDIC.
When was the last time that you noticed a billboard, either because it was good or because it was bad? What changes are being made to the out-of-home advertising industry that will change the way advertisers use them and how they capture data? Plus, we talk about the amazing time in Las Vegas when the Consumer Electronics Show and the Adult Video Expo collide for one of the craziest times you'll ever see. All that and more on today's episode of Marketing Madmen.
They say marketing is a madman's game. So now we turn it over to the Marketing Madmen with Nick Constantino and Trip Job.
Happy Saturday. Welcome to the Marketing Madmen. Trip Job here with Nick Constantino of 680 The Fan and Atlanta Braves Radio Network. Good to see you. And
Good to see you.
Man, the temperature, it's becoming fall, and it's like, whoa, shock to the system. So.
It is. I have my family, they came in from New York and they got down here like, it's colder here than it is in New York. I was like, oh, well, that's what happens. You guys bring the cold with you, I guess. I
know. Well, I'm getting ready to head over to the beach to see mine for the holidays. And I'm like, God, please warm it up over there. But
just a little bit.
Yeah. So today we're going to keep on the kind of the thing we've been doing about different types of media and giving our listeners, some thoughts about as they prepare their marketing mix for 2023. Sure. What are the areas? What are the questions they ask? What are the trends? And we're going to go maybe way back in the time machine, and then I think we'll rapidly come forward, but with out-of-home advertising.
I don't think we're going to go way back. I think we're going to go not as far back as it should be, to be honest, with how antiquated the industry is and was for a long time.
Yeah, no, it's, I still... I think we all remember the days of driving down, down South Georgia and seeing the one billboard after another, 1-888 call if you want to advertise, right? And that's the worst of the industry, and that's during the recessions and things like that. That's not what it is anymore.
Yeah, and I will say, I agree that it's the worst, but actually I believe the worst is the ones that have the novellas written on the billboards. And when people just forget that you're driving 90 miles an hour past that billboard and that you may be able to read just that 1-800 number.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's an industry that it's a little bit misunderstood, and I think it's, like most, not the end all. It's got to fit in a strategy, an overall strategy. Just like radio, just like TV, the copy is the most important part. You need a message to say, and you need to say it quickly, concisely, and with call to action.
And be able to be readable. I mean, that's and I have. So
big block letters.
Strategy. Okay, I've seen the good strategy, the good messaging, and I've seen the execution be horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it where there was one that was an ENT office that we saw. It was right down in here in Buckhead, and it was fantastic. And then you're trying to think of what it is in a billboard, but the font size for their email and their website, would have been equivalent to about a 3-point type on traditional email. Yeah. It was like, come on, this is 60 feet in the air. Yeah. Cars are going by at 30 miles an hour. And
30 miles an hour on a good day.
Right. And no one's going to remember where to go, so they're going to, guess what? They're going to go out and they're going to SEO some other allergy clinic.
For sure.
And guess what? You lost them.
Yeah, you might have increased the awareness of ENTs and allergy clinics, but you certainly didn't drive the awareness of the call to action of your own firm. I have a buddy, it's funny, he does billboards, and he only buys them in the winter because he says that the trees are done. There's no leaves on the tree, so you can actually see the billboard. So he buys the bad billboards only in the winter that the trees cover in the summer. He buys them at cost, and the billboard company still hasn't figured out that he's doing this, so he gets a screaming deal on billboards. So there is a strategy for sure to be using them. Let's talk about some different ones just to give everybody the quick update, because you before we even started, you enlightened me to some that I wasn't even thinking about. But let's go. Your traditional old school billboards, highways, those long Route 66 rides with billboards everywhere, the dust balls flowing beneath them, bus shelters, buses, trains, MARTA, all those. What else you got?
I think of trade shows. And so Atlanta's a huge trade market, whether you're involved in some of the trade shows here or you're involved in other markets. But if you're Atlanta business and you're involved here, you've got an advantage in knowing where to be and where not to be.
For sure.
All right. But I've seen the progression over the last 10 to 15 years. You mentioned MARTA. I've seen where, there's certain trains that take everyone in. Okay. They take everyone into the Congress Center, and where businesses will go and they'll do floor decals. You walk not only just maybe in the train, but maybe the floor decals on the, on the bridge, so to speak, as you're walking into MARTA at the World Congress Center and all that. And you can have a takeover there, which is incredibly
I gotta imagine Vegas is just buzzing with that.
Well,
like,
that's where I first saw it.
I mean, the amount. I mean, I've seen some of those big trade shows, CES and the Consumer Electronics Show, and they have the Cowboy Christmas when all the people bring in their wares. And I mean, give an idea, Trip, because I can guesstimate just how much money goes into putting on one of those trade shows and what the economic impact is, because it'll help people have some scale about how much marketing actually goes into it.
Well, it depends. So the biggest one that I ever heard from a single company, and this is in the building material space, so it doesn't approach some of the tech guys like Oracle, but Kohler every year. So KBIS and the Home Show, it goes back and forth between Vegas and Orlando. And I think Kohler's booth was something like 60 by 80 or something like that. And it first was about 10 years ago, they crossed the $1 million mark on their booth.
So that's renting the space, doing the activation. That doesn't even include the marketing that surrounds it.
The people
the
traveling, the entertainment, all that. Well, I think they're I think they're closer to 2 million at this point. And it's absolutely incredible. And I mean, when you think about it, all the you got home builders, you got every national and regional home builder that's there. The deals they probably do, it's exquisite, and they made the plan of we're going to spend the money here, maybe not as much advertising. And they do some of the activation and the things, the bus wraps and other things outside the shows when they're there. But that one is
amplification.
Probably
that's to amplify the presence that they have inside to make sure that you are, and that is probably the intention, is to stand out versus their competitors, which they sell at a price premium, but they have the footprint to be allowed to do that. So let me ask you this question: how do they measure the success of those events? And I ask because everything else has gone through this change to attribution modeling, and are they doing those events because they drive sales and they drive interest, or are they doing those events because they feel they have to because of the industry in which they're in?
Well, they have to. I mean, it is table stakes. There's no question.
So I'm in the wrong business. I should have been in the expo business.
But they're also, you hit a key point. They are, they're not the super niche premium, but they are they're the premium in mass national home builders. That's who's going to be at those shows, et cetera. I don't know specifically, but I'm pretty sure based on the people I know, someone who works there as a sales rep that used to work with us, they really look at their share with the big builders.
Okay.
And that's where they're making those deals, those impressions, et cetera. And as
three
long
home
as
builders
they're
closed, and it paid for itself 100 times over.
Yeah, or if they're hypothetically with Horton and Pulte and Lennar or whatever, let's just say they have 42% 1 year, with those three big builders, and they can raise it to 43%. That 1% gain of share, and again, coming through all that more than pays off for it.
So funny story about expos. I don't know if it's applicable, but it's funny, so I'm going to say it anyway. In Vegas, one of my favorite times of the year, I lived there for 7 years, is in January is when the Consumer Electronics Show comes in. Yeah. One, because it's just cool to see, but two, until recently, it happened to be the same time as the AVNs, which is the Adult Video Awards. So you would see the cross-section of computer nerds with porn stars, there's no other way to say it, that would all interact and all at the same time. And I'm talking hundreds of thousands of both would collapse on the same convention space. And the nighttime was unlike anything, because that's the other side of this, right? The steak dinners, all the business afterwards. But if you could imagine the look of the tech guys interacting with the porn stars and the Playboy models, and it is unlike anything you've ever seen in your life. And I like that this is a theater of the mind medium. I will let your imagination run rampant, but my goodness gracious, is one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my entire life.
Well, now I know why the World of Concrete was never had those same dates, because the World of Concrete, all the entertainment places are full at night because it is a bunch of mason contractors. But you can only imagine what some of the expense reports that used to come across various people's desk after that
or
week.
didn't come across.
Yeah, it's like,
I don't think you can expense in single dollar bills.
I think we're getting off topic.
On we go.
Let's hit a couple trends real quick of what else is going out there. So I think one of the things that there's some studies out there, and we are seeing a little more mobility. Okay, and by mobility, that is we're back in the office. Anyone who's in Atlanta and driving 400 and 285 these days knows that traffic is back. But it's about the same level as it was 3 years ago.
Yeah, from what I understand, the amount of cars on the road is back to the level, but people are actually taking more trips in their day. And that's because people are working from home. Maybe they're hybrid workers. Maybe they're trying to distract themselves. Because honestly, I've spent a couple of days working from home, and it's hard. I got 2 little kids, and me and my wife together in that house all the time. I am a social person. I lose it. So I think more trips leads to more frequency, not necessarily as much reach, because not everyone's driving 400 at the exact same time to go to work, but definitely more frequency.
That's a great point. I mean, I'm not in an office anymore, but I probably eat out for lunch more than I used to.
For sure. Just
because I need to get out of my home office.
For sure.
And so, it's a quick run to Panera or whatever it ends up being, but no question. So that's up, even transit. So whether it's the MARTAs or, BART, if you're out on the West Coast or whatever, it's up 40%, this says, first half of this year versus first half of last year. Air travel is back. It's up a little over 50% over the first half of last year.
Business travel is back too, which surprised everyone. The thought was going to be COVID was going to change it forever, but I think it only actually strengthened the desire and the need for people to go face to face. So those trips are roaring back. And when you see your airfare prices go up, most times that is being dictated by business travel more than it is by consumer travel. That's the majority of people that are flying. That's why a Wednesday and a Thursday, if you go to Atlanta, Hartsfield, Jackson, is as busy as a Sunday is, because those people are getting out on early flights across the country.
Yeah, and think about it. So we didn't mention airport, but if you're in the travel industry, if you're and I see it from time to time, and I give them a lot of credit. Let's just say you're in the island somewhere. Okay, you go, well, where do I want to advertise? This time of year, you ought to be doing the advertising as people are heading out to the gates or actually out at the terminals, because guess what? The business travelers are starting to get wary from the end of the year, and you start putting that thought in their mind about places to go.
Yeah, it's ironic. I was just thinking about this. You don't see anything at the security checkpoints because everyone's so pissed off that they're waiting in line that they're definitely not paying attention to that they're not paying attention to a billboard.
No, there's 2 ways. There's the one, again, going back to trade shows, where you see the companies on the way in, and so they're trying to get your attention, and that could be the hotels, it could be the dining places, the entertainment, whatever. And then on the way out, when people are going, that's the one you're doing a little more long-term. It's not today because they've already got their ticket, but that, I want to go on vacation in January. Start to get them thinking now.
Yeah.
So, it's really interesting. I know we're going to dig in a little more. We've talked about the kind of the old school. I want to get into where is it truly going?
Yeah.
There's been such advancements in out-of-home advertising. So when we come back, I think, Nick, you've got someone who's going to join us, and we're going to really get into, what are the tricks of the trade today? What are some of the best practices? So you're listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3.
Don't miss the 10 for $10 produce sale this week at Safeway. Get select produce like large Hass avocados, mangoes, cucumbers, large lemons, green, red, or yellow bell peppers, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby peeled carrots for only $1 each. Also this week at Safeway, select meats or buy one, get one free. Get items like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef or 16-ounce containers of Jenny O 93% lean ground turkey, burger patties or Italian-style or taco-style ground turkey. Buy one, get one free. Visit Safeway.com for more great deals.
Now back to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3 FM.
Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen. Trip Job here with Nick Constantino, and we were talking about kind of the history of out-of-home advertising, and now we're going to jump into really someone who's been involved in a lot of the changes and can really get us up to speed of how the industry has evolved and how it's becoming much more modern. So, Nick, with all your contacts, why don't you introduce our special guest?
Sure. So we have on the line Mr. Brian Faith. I'm going to probably just keep calling him Faith by natural instinct. But Faith, first off, to congratulate him, he just wrapped up a master's. Good news is he finished the master's. Bad news is he did it in sports analytics, so now he's going to have to break into the sports industry, which is quite a task these days from what I hear. But congrats for that, buddy. Why don't you kind of introduce yourself a little bit, and let's talk through some fun things in OOH.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Really excited to do this. Just listening to the past episodes that you guys have done, it really is a fresh take on just getting down onto the street and really having meaningful conversations that can matter to the small and medium-sized businesses that you're going after. I have about 17 years of media planning and media selling experience. About 10 years of that has been in what I'll call lifestyle out of home, and I'll kind of dive into that a little bit. I also have over 3 years in radio sales, so I know most of the language that you guys are speaking and on your show and what you're doing at 680 The Fan. I've always focused on media that helps brands and companies get in front of people when they're most likely to be receptive to a message. So I took a media planning course in undergrad 20-something years ago at this point that brought this idea of consumer aperture to life, right? So you think of aperture with like your cameras and when it's open to taking in the light. And that to me was like a light bulb going off. And how can you as a marketer or as a brand or as a company get in front of people when they want to see a message, when they want to be open to that, especially now, fast forward to 2022, when people are just getting bombarded with
absolutely
digital, social, everything.
Yeah, Brian. I mean, I give you credit. It's not just I've got this to sell, and let me find a business who wants to take this billboard off our hands.
Yeah, and I'll add to that.
On the hard route.
What about the ADD? I mean, man, Tripp and I can't even stop without jumping over you or talking over each other. We're in just an ADD world, man. So not only are you being bombarded by marketing, from my math, in like the 80s, late 80s, it was even 90s. 8 to 10 forms of marketing. I've heard like 250, 300. Amazon's marketing to you. eBay, you're trying to buy something from someone and they're trying to market you someone else's message. It is insane. So I think that aperture is a great word for it, and one I am absolutely going to steal. So we're going to have Tripp's going to get kind of start this off with some questions, and we'll just walk this through freeform, bud.
Yeah, no, I think so. Why don't you start a little bit with that idea? Because what I love is the fact that the way you're approaching it, when someone would be most likely to visit your message, you are considering a full package, a full marketing plan, not just the out-of-home advertising portion. So why don't you start a little bit with how you used to think about that for clients?
Yeah, and I think the key thing to start with here is it doesn't matter how small your business is or if you're Apple or Amazon. How can you weave your brand or your company into the daily routines of the target audience? That's kind of always been the challenge that I've tried to help these client partners that I've had solve. So that's the ultimate goal. How do you become part of someone's day? I can tell you that, and you guys know this better than I do, radio does that extremely well, right? That's like radio's known for that. And out of home can do that too. And it can be a lot more than a billboard up in the sky that someone drives by every day. For example, I sold ads on coffee sleeves, and I sold ads on gas station pump tops, and most recently, I've been putting ads on branded rideshare and gig economy vehicles. So when you think about someone's day and they get up in the morning and their radio wakes them up, or they have their favorite podcast that they put on their drive in, and yeah, they'll maybe hit that billboard, but they're going to grab their cup of coffee from their favorite spot. Maybe they got to hit the pump and grab something on the way back home. And then that night they might be going to dinner and hopping in an Uber. And that experience of, okay, how can we reach folks when they're going to be open to it and when they're doing something that is fun and exciting? And I think that kind of gets lost with out-of-home. Billboards are not the most fun, sexy thing to think about. But if you look at all the different formats of out-of-home that exist now, it's way more fun than it kind of is thought of, I think, in the general lexicon.
Right. So COVID changed a little bit of that. Now we're coming out of it. Why don't you hit, maybe for the listeners out there, what are some of the things that are changing, and how has the out-of-home industry evolved to, because you gave us a couple in some of your examples, but how do you see it evolving? And, that's different, and that's not maybe the traditional, but, I really do like the way you're saying, hey, let's understand how consumers are acting today.
Yeah, the big out-of-home buzzword, I know this isn't the buzzword podcast, but the big out-of-home buzzword is attribution.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're seeing that as well.
Radio too.
Yeah, so for out-of-home, attribution is not this digital last-click, bottom-of-the-funnel conversion metric, right? Out-of-home can drive that really well, and that's one of the trends that I'll talk about. But it's more about being able to take a sample of the audience that was exposed, and you can tie back behaviors like going to a website, adding something to a cart, down to making a purchase. It could be downloading an app or following a social media account. We can even tie back retail visits to an out-of-home exposure. And that could be, when I say out-of-home exposure, that could be the billboard. That could be the bus wrap. It could be the branded Uber or rideshare vehicle. It could be that coffee sleeve at this point. So there's a lot of underlying technology that is going into out-of-home. It's been happening for about 5 years. COVID kind of paused it there for a little bit, but it's really coming to the forefront now. And I would challenge the brands and the companies that listen to this and work with 680 The Fan. Don't just dismiss out-of-home because you can't measure it. And look, the economy is going to be tough. And I know as well as anybody that when you can just blanket say, well, we can't measure out-of-home, so we can't spend on that. We need to measure ROI. I need to know exactly how many people are coming into my store for every dollar that I spend.
Right.
Out-of-home can't help with that.
Faith, so, you're right. This is not the buzzword podcast, right? This is the Marketing Madmen Podcast. So let me ask you this question. We deal with this all the time. We have attribution modeling. We're tracking web lift, organic search, direct, keywords, blah, 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 blah. I have still yet to have someone explain to me in any marketing medium how any of it actually works. Do you know that you don't have to reveal if there's any proprietary information, but how the heck are you tracking somebody following a billboard to the point where they're going to a website if it's 4 hours late? What are the tools that exist to do that? What can you reveal, and how is it working, and what is the validity rate? I mean, how well is it working for everybody?
Yeah, I mean, the technology that's going into it now, even though Apple kind of changed the
Privacy,
location sharing on iPhones, there is this ability to capture anonymous data just based on folks sharing their locations, or if you use a weather app or any sort of app that relies on your location to function, which is a lot of them, even if you want a Snapchat filter or something. I may be dating myself. Maybe it's like a TikTok filter or something. But all of that location data that's being shared can be piped into an out-of-home plan. So that you can say, okay, for example, most recently at the branded rideshare company, we were able to capture a sample of anonymous mobile ad IDs that were within 50 feet of a branded rideshare vehicle at any given second. And then we were able to tie those ad IDs to a household device graph and create an unexposed group that was a lookalike group to those exposed households. And then we could compare website visits, app installs, or retail visits between those groups.
Hey, with that, I don't want to dive too deep in here, but I've seen it over the past 5 years, and I think there were probably more instances of people not using geofencing correctly early on. I think it has gotten better, but as you start talking about, geolocation, the idea of you geofence, whether it's a trade show, whether it's a, maybe it's a customer dealer, et cetera, and then you work to create, whether it's out of home or other advertising around that. Do you want to speak to that a little bit? Because, again, I think that was incredible opportunity that was probably misused, at least for the first 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, I think there was some confusion about what it was. So, you can buy your bus wrap in downtown Atlanta and then geofence the route so that anybody that moves in and out of where that bus goes can sort of be captured. And then they can be digitally retargeted through, whatever digital platforms that a company wants to use. That, to me, is less tech-savvy, geofencing, buzzwordy, and that's just smart media mix modeling, right? That's running your radio and mixing it with digital and having an out-of-home element that also reinforces that messaging.
Yeah.
That, to me, is just common sense media planning.
Right.
Where what out-of-home can do now is say, we have a sample of folks that we know were exposed, that were within a certain viewable radius at the exact same time that the ad was present, that the ad message was there, and now we can retarget those folks on a one-to-one basis. It might not be everybody that saw the bus or everybody that saw the rideshare vehicle, but we know that that portion of the sample audience was exposed.
And I have to imagine, now that you're saying it, it makes a ton more sense. Radio deals with something very similar, but your sample size is so massive that you are able to draw a correlation, right? I mean, you're talking a billboard on I-85 probably sees 1 million people over a week, something like that. You know, even if 100,000 people clicked on a link, you're still able to draw a correlation because your sample size is so large. So that makes much more sense to me as to how you can actually do it. So I have to imagine it's similar to radio in the sense you can't expect to see results or even a proper sample size without doing it for a certain amount of time, right? These are month-long campaigns that have really good copy. It's all the same principles of marketing, right? I'm sure you've seen some horror stories of people using it wrong. Tell us one example of a client who used it right and you really saw some really good results in somewhere in your career.
Yeah, what we've seen the work the best is there's a tentpole event that's happening. It could be the Super Bowl. It could be a Georgia football game. It could be a Falcons game. Like, these are things that I've actually done. I'm not just pandering to the Georgia audience here.
It's a good move to do it, though.
We were talking about trade shows before you came on, too. So that's another example of a tentpole event as well.
Yeah, we've done a lot of B2B conferences and things like that. So whatever kind of sparks that initial, okay, we're interested in doing some out-of-home around this. Typically, the requests will come in, can we do 3 days? And out-of-home can actually do that now digitally. There's a lot of things going on from a technology standpoint. But the best versions of it are, okay, if the event is in a market that you care about, what is your target audience doing besides going to that conference for 3 days or besides going to the Georgia game on Saturday? They're around the market. So you need to really build this plan, not thinking of, I need, 2,000 folks that are going to be at the tailgate, which is super important, and we can build it around that. But how are we talking to them leading up to that? What are we doing after that to stay in touch with them? Because, again, how we kick this off is you're bombarded with so many messages and so many ad stimulus throughout the day, every hour, that you need to have that consistency. So
I love it because you're
need for out of home that it has to be 8 weeks or you have to do quarter-long campaigns.
Love that.
It's definitely helpful, but we could be a little more nimble than that. But just think about that kind of long-term. What's the goal of reaching this target audience for a day?
Yeah, you're getting that brand awareness during that period, and then you're actually activating them afterwards. Look, I'm not sure the exact, but I'm going to say more than 50% of companies forget or just don't execute on the after event.
Sure. And there's a clear call to action, right? That event is the call to action. If it's a Georgia game, for example, that event is the call to action. When I was talking about long-term campaigns, it's more brand building and trying to change consumer behavior. You're talking about call to action. So I love that. That is quantifiable. You see the lift. It's a short span, but it's a heavily promoted short span. Talking about future changes and kind of similarities to radio, talk about how programmatic has eked its way into this. It's something we're dealing with, just for some context, even at the radio station, we're doing 12 million sessions on our app because we carry the Braves. We backfill programmatic. I have enough experience in the space to know that it's a great way to fill it and that the ads really do a good job of matching up with the audience. But at the same time, it's pennies on the dollars and it's probably single-handedly destroying part of the industry. So what's been your experience with programmatic, especially on the digital OOH front?
It's odd how you described it for radio. And when I was working in radio, it was just taking off. Digital and streaming. Podcasting was kind of being talked about, but it wasn't big yet. So to see it now, I think out of home is kind of at that earlier stage where what's really cool about programmatic digital is it's time sensitive. You can run it exactly when you want. You can day part. You can really load up on contextually relevant messaging, and that goes back to that aperture and reaching people when they want to be measured or reached. And you can capture these key moments, right? It could be that big Georgia win or the Braves clinching the playoffs, something like that. Programmatic digital allows you to just get up in a couple days. You can traffic your existing digital creative or your video creative, and you're done. Yeah. And you don't have to get trapped into this thinking of out-of-home is this really time-sensitive, burdenous process that creatively it's going to take us forever to do it. There's production lead times. Like, we just don't have the time to do out-of-home. We need to act today on this. Out-of-home, from a digital standpoint, can react that way just as well as anything else. Yeah,
let me ask you this question on a local front, because, again, your feet on the streets, right? This is what we always talk about here. So in my experience, when you make something transactional, it's a harder sell and it's the easiest thing to cut. One of the things about radio, and I believe from what I understand about like billboard salespeople, that relationship is key. So do you think the industry is a little bit worried about having that transactional relationship replace those long-term relations that people have one-on-one?
I think there's worry that it gets fragmented and maybe the biggest players in the game are slower to convert all of their billboards to digital billboards and things like that, right? And I'm sure you're seeing that all over Atlanta. And some of the more nimble companies, and this applies to the agencies too, are able to, there could be city information panels downtown that can flip, or there could be the link boards and things like that that you can get up on really, really quickly. Now you're part of a rotation, and the measurement, I think, is lacking because you might have a rotation that gets you a certain share of voice, but you don't necessarily really know if the folks you want to reach are getting that message because it's rotating every 8 seconds. So I think there's some worry there, but overall, there's optimism about the dynamic nature that this brings to out-of-home, and it kind of brings them out of the Stone Ages into the digital world, and it's a flash forward. It reminds me of the old Tom Cruise movie, Minority Report. Like, out-of-home is going that way, where it's just video messaging everywhere, and it's kind of going to happen either way, whether you like it or not.
Well, remember, those are all dystopian movies, though. So are we gonna guess that it's going to be the downfall of society? Because I don't remember. I don't know what's the opposite. A utopian world where there's billboards everywhere. It's always the dystopian worlds are ending, and it's always a negative thing. So I think you just predicted the end of an industry or the end of the world. One of the two, right there.
I don't know, maybe we'll go back to the Truman Show and
yeah,
as well. Hey, you said getting out of the Stone Ages. One of the things that I think about, and I think people get it a little more with radio and TV and print, is that, hey, I'm not going to just be in one spot or one medium, that maybe I'll have different messages depending on the audience. And I think you hit on it. I mean, there's two ways of doing it without a home. The traditional was, hey, let's just have the same message and let's put it up 8, 12, whatever different billboards around the city. But then you talked about there's so many different ways to do it now, whether it's, it could be a wrap, it could be streetwise, it could be digital billboards, that idea of, what is a better strategy? Is it, maybe slightly different messages and slightly different mediums versus just doing one single type of out-of-home ad?
Yeah, I think even within out-of-home, the more you mix it up and the more different elements that you can include, this would apply to your overall media mix and putting your marketing plan together. But even within out-of-home, I think the more times you can get somebody to look up and say, I'm seeing that everywhere, that just can make your campaign feel so much bigger. Just by virtue of having,
absolutely. I think one of the things that we see is if you see the same thing at the same spot every day, it just goes in the back of your mind. But if all of a sudden you see a different message, and then you pick it up, it's you start to get it and it resonates more often.
Yeah, that's one of the things we talk about with the rideshare advertising is, you're not going to pull down your billboards or stop doing your digital campaigns or your social campaigns or your radio campaigns to buy our rideshare media. But think about the gaps that this can fill in when someone is excited to hop in that rideshare and go to dinner or go to the game or go to the tailgate or their friend's house or whatever it is. You can be a part of that moment.
Yeah, and I like the way you said that.
They will drive by the billboard and they will hear your radio commercial, but you can be a part of that interesting moment that is going to, it's more surprise and delight than it is this big brand message.
Which means it's more memorable. You're cutting through the clutter. And I like the way you said that. And what I could recommend to any listeners listening right now that are thinking about these marketing mediums, those are the kind of conversations you want to have. If you're dealing with somebody who says, don't advertise anywhere else, advertise with me, run for the hills. Because honestly, it does not work. We even say it. If your client, if you don't have good SEO, then the billboard's not going to work because no one's going to read the website. They're going to see the name. They're going to Google it. But what if your competitors search bombing you and you can't get there? So I think what Faith just said about that marketing mix and how this all works together, if you have an agency or a client or anybody that is telling you to do one thing and that be the end all, you're being told to do the wrong thing. And I don't think there are many exceptions. No. There probably are one or two, and I don't want to be rude to those people, but that marketing mix, even if it's $1,000 a month, there's still a way to provide a marketing mix. Speaking on that, Faith, where have you seen some success? So talk about maybe social media, for example. Talk about how these things are working together. I know social media has changed dramatically, just like billboards have, and it's been more like over the past 3 weeks, not 5 years. But talk about how it works with social.
Yeah, I think when you step back and you think about social media, what's the currency? Today, Attention. It's video and photos. And we're just sharing videos and photos nonstop. It's not the old like Facebook text messages that people are posting, right? They're posting video content, they're posting photos. It's on Instagram, TikTok's all video. Whatever comes next will be even better video or virtual reality or something like that. And out of home is tailor-made to have pictures and videos taken of it, right? It's kind of the only media format that you would snap a selfie in front of if it was something so cool or so relevant that you would actually be able to grab a picture of it, right? You're not taking a picture of that TV commercial to share it with your friends. Radio has its own sort of theater of the mind that it gets into.
Right.
That's different, but you can't.
But completely different. It's a completely different thing. Theater of the mind is you making your own image. You are actually saying, share the image I already have given.
You use your assets. Exactly what you're talking about. I'm looking at a bus stop right now. So if you got an influencer who's all of a sudden going to do a quick video, have them do it with, guess in the background, your bus stop ad right there. Use your assets multiple times to create that environment.
Yeah.
So these are fantastic thoughts and best practices. And Brian, appreciate you joining us. Really, I think super bit of information for those in the OOH space. So with that, we're going to shift to a break, and you're listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3.
Don't miss the 10 for $10 produce sale this week at Safeway. Get select produce like large Hass avocados, mangoes, cucumbers, large lemons, green, red, or yellow bell peppers, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby peeled carrots for only $1 each. Also this week at Safeway, select meats or buy one, get one free. Get items like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef or 16-ounce containers of Jenny O 93% lean ground turkey, burger patties or Italian style or taco style ground turkey. Buy one, get one free. Visit Safeway.com for more great deals.
Now back to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3 FM.
Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen. Trip Job and Nick Constantino here. Man, that was exciting, and I think just a wealth of information from your buddy Brian.
I don't think anyone in the earth would have thought we were talking about OOH and we would have said exciting, but that seems to be what have happened. I think that he, we're buddies, but I was always intrigued by his thoughts on marketing. That he's going to get that master's for sports analytics, so that analytical background combined with creativity, I think, is what really makes marketers succeed. So I'm glad that a lot of that came out. I still question a lot of these attribution models. And even for our own stuff, I look at it and I'm like, I don't know how you're possibly doing that. I don't want anyone to become overly reliant on it. I hear it too often, that last click and these attribution. And I think you got to go on instinct, right? There's something about a billboard. You remember the good ones. I promise you, each of you remember the good ones. I'll give you an example. Ken Nugent has been an advertiser for a long time, built his name on buses, right? I was actually at the photo shoot where he took his most recent one, which is him in literally a bomber jacket that says "one call, that's all" with his finger up. Yeah. It is so doofy. He's got his glasses on, looks like he's straight out of the 50s, 60s. But I remembered it. And I remembered it, one, because I was at the photo shoot, but it's just so unique. And all it is, white billboard, picture of him, one call, that's all. That is the entire billboard.
Simplification.
Simplification,
really
but you remember. There's something about it, and what I'm trying to say is, take the analytics, use them, understand them, weaponize them to make sure you are optimizing your campaigns and you're doing it. But something about that spark of seeing that creative, of seeing that ultimate visual, of hearing that commercial, don't let yourself lose that, because that is where I really think we are losing our creativity and making this too transactional. And I don't want to see marketing go that way, because I promise you it will lose its overall effectiveness.
Right. Well, and I think some of it is, what we talked about with Brian was understand where your consumers are going to interact with it. So again, if it's a billboard, they're going by it 30, 40, 50 miles an hour. If it is and I'm going to use the bus stop, but the bus stop also can be used as a retail front, that is a chance to take, what would typically be a print ad, blow it up. Because guess what? You've got someone who's standing, sitting, or maybe slowly walking by. There you have a chance to expand that message and be a little more emotional.
Yeah.
And grab it in. So it's not the same message depending on which type of OOH medium you're using.
Yeah. And honestly, do agencies even talk about billboards? It's similar to the problem with radio. Are they talking about these things? Do they know about this technology? That is what I wonder. And honestly, we are, as a company, myself, I'm on a mission to meet with as many agencies as I can. In fact, I think in a couple of weeks, we're going to have a couple of the big local agencies on, and it might get contentious. I'm telling everybody right now, because there are questions that have to be answered. And I think the people need to hear the answers to those questions if you care, if this is something that engages you. If not, you probably like just looking at the billboard. So I think we're going to keep down this path for quite some time.
Yeah, well, and I think one of the things, Nick, you brought out earlier, and I've said this for years, is if you're working with someone or having someone pitch you and they're the only option for you, right? They can't integrate it with somebody else. They don't understand other things. Run. All right. There's no one that's that good.
It's the same thing as someone telling you to buy only one form of financial instrument. Like if you're just buying an annuity, you're screwed. It's because that guy is selling annuities and wants you to make commission off selling you annuities.
Or scaring you, all right, now's the time to buy gold. Only buy gold. I mean, you have to diversify. You've got to have a marketing mix. And they need to understand where, and every business is different, and I don't like getting into a percentage marketing mix for different things because every business is different. But there may be some, businesses where 10% may be out of home, and there's others where it's 2%.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not an exact. It really needs to be, revolved around your customer base.
And industry specific. Great example. I mean, radio forever has chosen billboard as the marketing medium, right? Pretty obvious. You're in cars, you're driving, clear message. You have a call to action you can do on your dashboard. I don't think that's going anywhere. In fact, we have billboards all over town. It was Neil Bortz's big face right up on there. Probably listeners in this station are familiar. But what do you need to say more than that? Bortz is on Extra, right? That in itself sparks demand. I can't tell you how much momentum we lost when we switched those billboards over to Braves. Now, God bless Bortz, it was Braves season going into the playoffs. Like, there's time you have to do things. But I think that if you are patient and smart about how you track the use and success of those billboards, that they will work very well in the right marketing mix. And I think that is almost a guarantee if it is done the right way and you're pointing in the right direction.
Well, and one of the examples that we used to use, we had a dealer, contractor kind of combination up in the Boston area, hardscapes, outdoor, building your outdoor patios and all that. They picked a couple of incredibly important billboards on the commute out of Boston toward, it was within a couple miles of their location, hit you with the, that outdoor patio look.
Well, you have more space.
So you leave the city, you're leaving the city, you start to see it. You see it every day. And they started around March 1st, still snow on the ground.
Yep.
And they ran it through about June, because by the end of June, most of the contractors up there, they are full for the season. So they ran it for about 3 to 4 months. We were co-op, helped them. But it was an incredible, and it got people on their way home. They saw it. And maybe that one day traffic's bad, or it's ingrained in their mind, and they stopped in, pulled over, looked at the products, got a contractor's name, called the contractor, and the rest is history.
And you made it aspirational, right? So they're not looking at it thinking about a hardscape. They're thinking about you and you putting in the hardscape. So that is, you can't even put... You have to be needed before, you have to be known before you're needed. And in that case, you're making an aspirational purchase, something that becomes real.
Family grilling out, sunny day, looks like it's 70 degrees, and it's March 15th, and there's 2 feet of snow on the ground in Boston.
Yeah.
Guess what? I mean, that's what it's about.
Yeah, this has been awesome, Trip. I think let's tell them a little bit about the next couple of episodes. Most importantly, though, guys, whether you listen to a radio show, you listen to this a podcast, please tell your friends about it. Tell them, like it, subscribe it. I think we're doing good work here, and I really want to share these messages. Also, send us a note. Let us know what you want us to talk about. There's more out there in marketing than I will ever know. So we encourage you to engage with us, interact with us, and honestly, give us topics. Send guests. If you want to be a guest, we are open. We want to hear from people because I think that is where the disconnect is. This is taking high concept terms and making them applicable to local, medium-sized businesses. And shoot, if you're a Fortune 500 company, you might learn a trick or two too, because I bet you there's some local businesses doing things that the Fortune 500 set should be doing. Absolutely.
And, so we'll try not to use all the marketing terms, but no, we've got, we hit, obviously out of home today, we've hit radio, we hit social media. So we're, next week, we're going to have Jeannie Munn, who's an SEO expert, and she's actually, she teaches SEO as well as she's an expert. And
happy Thanksgiving to everybody on that note, because we are coming up on the holiday. Right. So make sure everybody gets nice and fat during the holiday.
Yep. So we'll have that, and we've got print media coming up, which is one of my old stomping grounds. And I know we're going to talk about print. So to your point, the goal is kind of to really go through a lot of the different channels and opportunities that most businesses have. Give you, like today, give you some of the best practices, give some of the trends of what's going on. And Nick, as you said, we're absolutely open to ideas. And find us on LinkedIn and give us ideas, things that you want to hear about. So.
Yeah, and we appreciate the listenership. And again, like, subscribe, listen whatever's easiest. We try to make it convenient for everybody.
Yeah. So kind of to wrap up on the out of home, I want to hit a couple of things, maybe your takeaways. I love the term aperture. Yeah. Right.
Completely stolen.
Put yourself in the customer's lens, essentially, and to think about where they're going to view you. The other one is, again, make sure that whoever you're working with has that perspective of where this fits with everything else they're doing.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I think if you start with those two things, and then, finally, out of home is not the 3-month, campaign that can't be changed. It is now evolved.
Dynamic.
There's digital ads. You can really target it. I mean, we talked about, hey, it can be a weekend football game like the SEC championship game. Those are all things that it's not your daddy's Cadillac or things of that nature. It is truly evolved, and I think there's a right mix for everybody. It might not be 10%, it might be lower, but it's something you really need to look at. Yeah. So until next week, thanks, Nick, as always, and we are the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3.
Don't miss the 10 for $10 produce sale this week at Safeway. Get select produce like large Hass avocados, mangoes, cucumbers, large lemons, green, red, or yellow bell peppers, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby peeled carrots for only $1 each. Also this week at Safeway, select meats or buy one, get one free. Get items like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef or 16-ounce containers of Jenny O 93% lean ground turkey, burger patties or Italian style or taco style ground turkey. Buy one, get one free. Visit Safeway.com for more great deals.
Tonight in Arkansas, there's a mother tucking in her daughter and turning off the light. A business owner is burning the midnight oil. An at-home dinner date is plating up possibility. And it's all happening under one roof. How? The power of a conversation, like the one John from Integrity Solutions had with First Horizon Bank about his vision for a sustainable mixed-use building. Now it's not just words, it's life. First Horizon Bank. Let's find a way. Go to firsthorizon.com/John. First Horizon Bank, member FDIC.